This week in IT SPARC Cast, EA and Qualcomm go all in on AI. Substrate wants to make chips with X-rays, and Ubiquiti lets you jailbreak your SFPs? Greetings and welcome to IT SPARC Cast News Bytes. I'm your host, John Barger.
And I'm your host, Lou Schmidt. Let's see what's going on out there.
It's Monday, November 3rd. Halloween is over. IT SPARCcast News Bytes is a digest of the IT news over the last week with insights, opinions, and a little sarcasm from two experts, each with over 20 years of experience working in IT or for IT vendors. And now for the News Bytes.
Now, just because Halloween is over doesn't mean we don't have some tricks and some treats for you.
That's true.
Welcome
That's
to the
true.
trick section.
There we go. So we got some good AI stories. We got kind of 2.5 AI stories we'll talk about today. And so the first one is that Electronic Arts is buying in on AI, and they have rolled out their own internal AI platform called Reef, R-E-F-F GPT. This is meant to help with game design across the company, and they're expecting everybody to start using this. And this initiative is designed as a productivity push. And we've seen lots of companies doing this, whether it's with off-the-shelf or in-home built large language models and other tools like that. And that's what EA seems to be doing. Now, that being said, and because of some of the news out there, which we're going to talk about a little bit later on layoffs, the employee reaction has been fairly mixed. So many of the internal users, the creative staff, report that the tool is unreliable. It cites that it's been doing hallucinations. It's been creating low quality artwork, which is really a lot of the things that we hear about ChatGPT and Grok and other tools that they do that. But they feel that their jobs are shifting from being creative types to becoming prompt engineers. Again, that's probably a fair assessment. And they also are raising concerns about job security. And based on what we're seeing in some other companies, that's probably a valid concern.
Absolutely is.
This internal divide over at EA is really, like I said, mirroring that tension that we're seeing at companies like Amazon and a bunch of the financial companies that are out there that have been reducing staff in favor of AI. And I think that this is just another trend that we're going to see. And we'll talk about that a little bit later, but the term that we have been using, and I've been using a lot, is that AI is not going to take your job, but somebody using AI will. Now, that doesn't mean that you're not going to see reductions. We're going to talk about that. They're definitely going to be seeing reductions in force. But I also do firmly believe that we're going to see more job creation because of AI and more opportunities. For example, we're seeing huge investments in AI data centers. We're going to see a lot of people put to work on the construction side, monitoring and managing those data centers, and a bunch of other things. That being said, you need to be prepared for, again, what we're going to be talking about a little later as far as what is coming and what your job entails and whether somebody using AI is going to take your job. So you need to be prepared for that.
And I to put a highlight on this, I've seen a lot of traffic on social media for particular types of artists, especially movie makers that are really leery of this technology. They're saying, well, it's not real art. Quite frankly, in my opinion, telling a story is an art. The tool that gets you there is open to negotiation. Whether you have to sit by a fire or make a movie or make a game, it's all storytelling. And from what I've seen so far, AIs cannot just spin stories that make sense. So,
right.
But there is definitely a people side to this. And we're going to go a little deeper into this. But one interesting point, there's a hardware thing that just hit. Other than OpenAI and Nvidia making deals and trying to buy the entire world. And that's Qualcomm. So this is interesting. Qualcomm is joining the AI arms race, but in a really interesting way. And I got this off CNBC, but it's here, there, and everywhere. Qualcomm announced last week 2 new AI processor lines, the AI200, it's available in 26 next year, and the AI250, which is targeted for 2027. And their target is large scale inference in data centers. Now, what does this mean? Let me talk about this for a second. If you're developing a model and you're training it, you need a broadband, high capability processor like what Nvidia makes. I would also argue AMD's in the hunt, and Intel's going to be in the hunt fairly soon. Broadcom's there too. But to run the model, you need an inference engine, and it is subtly different and easier to
Right.
do. So what Qualcomm did is they have taken their hexagon neural processing unit architecture, which they put in their mobile chips. They have a lot of experience in this, and they've scaled it out for rack mount liquid cooled server infrastructure with up to 768 gig per rack and a support for large transform models. So they are now competing with Nvidia and AMD in the AI data center accelerator market, shifting beyond its mobile and telecom business. So what we're starting to see finally is some diversity here. We're getting much more diversity. Qualcomm stock rose about 11% on the announcement, but the challenge is steep, right? Nvidia currently dominates. I'm not willing to write off Qualcomm on this because they do a stonking vector processing stack, really, really
Yeah.
optimized. And that's going to matter.
So the interesting thing about the Qualcomm announcement, and I think why it's actually really, really good news, is I feel that we're going to continue to start bumping into resource constraint out there because companies like Nvidia are going to max out their capacity, or we saw that Samsung is maxing out their memory capacity when it comes to things like building out open just for open AI alone,
Mm-hmm.
let alone everybody else. And that's going to start driving prices up if we're not careful.
And already has.
So
Have you
right,
shopped for
but I mean,
RAM
like
lately?
to a whole nother level, like just crazy levels at this point, at some point. But by others that are good at this, like Qualcomm, getting into and starting to compete to some degree against Nvidia, that's going to increase, if nothing else, it'll increase the capacity to create these chips, and we won't see as dramatic of a spike, maybe. But the other part to this is the term I've been using for the last few weeks is the AI gold rush, especially with Project Stargate going on out there, and they're putting in $500 billion into that to build out data centers. That the people that are going to make the most money are the effectively the people building the shovels for the gold rush, and the chips that that's what Qualcomm's doing here. They're jumping into this, and I think that they'll do really well here, and I think that we will benefit as the users by seeing this happen.
And I mean, part of the challenge is, can you actually tape out? A lot of these chips are being made from TSMC. Hold on that one, because we have good news for you. We've got a treat there.
We do.
But one thing
but we do have that bad news that you mentioned, and we're starting to see significant layoffs across many different companies. And so you've all probably heard that the announcement that Amazon was going to be laying off between 13 and 14,000 people. Insiders saying it's going to be closer to 30 or more. We're seeing Intel with potentially more than 24,000, Accenture and others just laying off lots and lots of people. And we're going to see a number of impacts here. First of all, this is what we're talking about making sure you shore up your job and that you know what you're doing. You're using the right tools. You're using AI as a force multiplier for your own daily work, but be prepared that things can change quickly and that you need to have a backup plan and a parachute in case something does change. And that might mean retraining for different jobs. If you're in IT, you're probably okay in general, but like if your main job is troubleshooting, if your main job is help desk, that's going to be impacted.
I believe so. I believe so.
Because I mean, we're seeing all these vendors out there that are releasing their own LLMs that have their knowledge base built into it. And so if I can go in and type in, how do I debug this model Cisco switch, or I'm seeing this happen on my Cisco switch, what does that mean? And I can do that at 2 o'clock in the morning or on my lunch break or whatever, and not have to call somebody and work through the tree to get to somebody. I'm going to do that 100% of the time. And so that's something that we all have to be aware of.
And when you dig deeper into this, John and I think there's three factors, right? There's one, there's a macroeconomic factor in the fact that a lot of government spending is going away. right? Whether
Yeah.
you're shut down or it's being, the massive amount of debt, a lot of that spending has to go away. That impacts you. Number two, we're trying to reshore our manufacturing. And by doing
Yep.
that, we are inevitably going to cause conflicts. But I think one of the biggest things and one of the reasons why we put it in the AI section is if you look at like Accenture, Microsoft, PricewaterhouseCoopers, Salesforce, that's AI, right?
Yep.
That is 100% AI right there. We're going to see a lot more. But before you go, oh my God, the world is falling on IT. US, there was a headline today in all sides. US job cuts approach 1 million in
Yeah.
2025. 1 million. So it's not just us. There's a lot going on. And as John mentioned, this is a tremendously good time to look at how you approach things and how you can upskill what you're doing, how you can make this stuff work better, because there is no more safe positions.
Yeah.
None of them.
And I think that's true that, even if you're a management level, maybe even more so, because if they start reducing people, then they need less managers too. So just, there's lots of things to be aware of. So watch your back
Yeah.
and prepare, make sure you have, whether it's a side gig or you're shoring up your knowledge for another role, or you're even just actively searching, be prepared for this to happen. So unfortunately.
Now we have two treats for you. There's some good
We
news
do.
here. John, could you lead off with
Th-
one of the tasty ones?
Yeah, this is super exciting. So Ubiquiti has announced what they call SFP Liberation Day. And this comes with both a new product, but also a new model and a new set of rules for how they deal with SFPs. So it's really, really exciting. So first, what they've announced is that they're dropping the price on their SFP and QSFP modules, and they're releasing a SFP Wizard. And this is a pocket size. I was going to say it's like about the size of a pack of cigarettes, but most people may not even know that anymore. But it's a little bit smaller than a smartphone. It's a little thicker, but a little smaller than a smartphone. And it's got a little screen on it, and you connect your SFP or your QSFP to it, run your optic line into a switch, and when I first started looking at this, I thought it was really just a SFP tester, but it's so much more
But
than that. It
it does
actually lets
test
you.
SFPs and
It does test
QSFPs.
them. Absolutely, it does. But what's even more interesting is that it lets you reprogram those SFPs, and then program them specifically for another model switch. So this is effectively fooling a switch that might have a lock on it saying you can only use X, Y, and Z SFPs. It's a lot of letters, sorry. But but you can reprogram the SFP or the QSFP or the SFP plus to work with that switch. And that is really cool. Now, I'm expecting we're going to see pushback. I'm sure that Cisco and HPE and Extreme and all the other vendors are not going to be happy with this. And I think it's going to be problematic if you try to call in for support, but the question I have, and I really want to test this thing out, is how good a job does it do? If you get on a call with a tech support person from one of those vendors, and they say they want to find out if you're using one of their SFP modules, will they be able to tell? And that'll be an interesting play. So I'm going to keep an eye on this. And the other thing, $49.
49
This thing is
bucks.
This thing's under $50. And by the way, as of this recording, they sold out. They sold out in like a day and a half. It was like crazy. So so I want to buy one, but I can't right now. And then the other part is that Ubiquiti is backing off on their policy that they had, just like everybody else. You have to use either our SFPs or certain trusted SFPs. And I've actually used third-party SFPs on my Unify switch already. So they weren't real strict on that, but it was probably more of a tech support thing. If you called up for support, they wouldn't help you, just like most of the vendors. But they basically backed off on that, saying you can use any SFP you want. You can use this wizard to program it so that it does what you need. And they're talking about, the markup on branded SFPs can be a 100x. So we're talking about potentially 1,000% savings in some of these cases, where you can get a module for $50 instead of 500 or $1,000.
But there's another upside to this. And that is,
Yeah.
you haven't lived as a troubleshooter until you've had a mismatch, a firmware mismatch between one SFP or QSFP and another one. So
Yeah.
what I found, this happened to me when John and I were in our last position, the link came up. It saw the optics. It wouldn't pass traffic. I would have killed for one of these. I would have paid $500 for one of these, not 50, just to get around this problem, because there's a known issue between an Intel NIC and this certain vendor's switch. And it
Yeah.
used to be that you had to have another acquisition switch from the same vendor to reprogram the firmware on the SFP so that it would work. With this thing, done.
It's brilliant. Absolutely brilliant.
John, I'm not tired of giving away treats. Can I give away a really, really
Yeah.
tasty one here? I know it's
Let's do the
after.
next one.
Okay. We talked a lot about the advantage of Qualcomm coming into the market more. One of the challenges is there are only so many wafers running through advanced machines right now, like TSMC and Samsung. And I think Intel in its new 1.8 or Note 18 is going to work out fairly well when they get it debugged. What are we going to do to get more chips? And what are we going to do to bring it back to geographically distribute it so that we are not dependent on one island that's under immediate threat? US startup Substrate announced it's making a tool that will rival the illuminator that's provided by ASML. So this was in Reuters, this was FT World, Wall Street Journal, everywhere. So what they did is they built a new chip making tool designed to up the chip making process, and it uses X-ray lithography. Now, why is that important? The ASML tool uses extreme ultraviolet. It's right on the edge of light and X-ray. The higher the frequency, the shorter the wavelength. And the shorter the wavelength, the smaller the features you can make. Now, one of the challenges, we're starting to run out of atoms, but a more advanced tool is going to be great. IBM's been messing around with this since the 80s. I think these guys finally cracked it. Substrate got it $100 million in investment. So they're valued over $1 billion right now. And their immediate target is to bring semiconductor manufacturing back to the United States for economic and national security reasons. Experts are saying that the challenge is massive, that advanced lithography is extremely complex, but once again, there's a lot of prior art here. And there were some new breakthroughs in X-ray generation made by the national laboratories. But I think if they can mask and actually control this, and I think they had to have to get this funding, the Substrate could reshape the entire chip equipment landscape. Really, really big. But there's some caveats here, John. Why don't you run them?
Yeah. So right now they appear to be in demo mode as part of getting funding and building out. There is no commercial launch date that's been announced. The closest I could find was that their CEO James Proud said that they would be producing chips at scale by 2028. So that's still a few years out. Now, the interesting thing is that he said that they would be producing chips. So the theory out there is that they're going to not be, at first at least, selling these tools to other chip manufacturers. They're going to be building their own fab. And again, that's probably really smart, and that they can be, just it's like Apple building their own silicon chips. They're cutting out the middle man. They're getting rid of the margins on that, and they can start building chips at the same degree that TSMC does. So they're effectively competing with both TSMC and ASML.
Well, ASML is one of the key tools that TSMC uses to get its node.
Correct.
I believe Samsung is using them as well. But if you look at what TSMC is doing with their process, it is unique to them. They came up with this. So having these guys produce their own fab facilities, becoming another foundry, which, let's be fair, is a concept that TSMC actually invented. All the other chip foundries that we had, IBM, NEC, my wife used to work for NEC doing their custom A6, IBM, Samsung, all that came about because they were domestically manufacturing. It looks to me like Substrate's model is a straight take on TSMC. We're going to build next generation fabs in the United States. You bring your design to us, work with our process engineers, off you go. So this is fantastic news.
It absolutely is. And so, I'm always a fan of competition, and especially in a market. In this case, there really was no significant competition for ASML.
Samsung
They
is
really
out
had
there.
a lock on this.
They're not bad. I think Intel is not out of the race, but TSMC is definitely producing at scale right now.
Correct. But as far as the lithography side, ASML is really the only player that's out there. These machines cost $400 million a piece.
That's just for the light source.
That's just for the light source.
That's just for the EUV machine. If you look at the total line on these things, billions. $15 billion to build a data center now.
So there's a lot of money out there, but this competition is going to be great for us. So absolutely. Yeah, absolutely.
We got some feedback, John. You want to get on that?
We did. So before we wrap up, I do want to talk about some feedback. And BJ reached out to us on YouTube. He left a comment on last week's video where we were talking about the AWS outage and how part of the problem in the AWS outage was the architecture of these apps running in the cloud. It wasn't just on AWS. Obviously, AWS had a big problem on their side, but apps could be built to be more resilient. And his response was, he says, I think you underestimate the time, effort, and money it takes to disaggregate the app the way you're suggesting. And I don't think we are.
We don't.
I actually responded to it that way.
Really
because we actually pointed that out. It is expensive.
Yes.
And the problem, Lou's quote was that 50% of the internet is cheap, meaning they're too cheap to go out and build it this way. Now, that's a trade-off you have to decide to make. Am I okay with going down if something happens in the cloud somewhere that I may not even be directly running on? Am I okay with going down for some period of time? And if I am, and that's better for me to save the money on the architecture, then that's fine. But there were companies that were losing millions of dollars a minute because of this outage. And that's the kind of company that should be architecting from scratch. It's a little difficult to do this after the fact, to go back and change it. But from the beginning, you should be architecting your apps to run in a disaggregated mode so that the worst thing that happens is you degrade your services versus lose them. And that's what we're saying. And
Absolutely.
Again, it's not cheap. It's not easy. And it takes time. We understand all of that, but it's important. And if it's important to you to stay up, then it's important to you to architect it properly.
Absolutely.
So that is going to cover this episode. We couldn't do this podcast without listeners like you and like BJ. We appreciate any kind of feedback, even if it's pushing back on our thoughts or telling us maybe that we're wrong on something. But do you have a topic that you want us to cover? Do you have any thoughts about the coming AI layoff apocalypse or whatever you want to call it? Send email to feedback at IT SPARC Cast or hit us up on X at IT SPARC Cast. And again, like BJ, if you're watching on YouTube, you can leave a comment down below. We read every single comment and read every bit of feedback we get. We respond to most. And if it's particularly interesting or insightful, we'll read it out on the broadcast. Make sure you hit like, subscribe, and turn on notifications. That way you never miss an episode. And until next time, from the world of enterprise IT, take care.
Thanks for coming by. We'll see you next time.
Unify Wizard, do your magic.